Karen Williams. My name is Karen McDonald. I am from New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. I grew up there. I spent the first 18 years of my life there, then went off to university and never left. So right now I live in Cole Harbour with my husband Keith. I just turned 60 in May. I have two children and four grandchildren, and I work with Nova Scotia Business Inc. as an export development executive. I've been working in export development with the provincial government for over 17 years now and truly love my job. One thing I learned about turning 60 this year is that it keeps getting better and better. It's freedom. It's a process. I think over the years I've learned that, as younger women, sometimes we carry a lot of woundedness with us. Could have started as deeply as when, or we may not been, our mothers may not have wanted us. And I really feel we could have felt that in our wombs. And, our parents always try to do the very best they can, but they're not always perfect, and dealing with issues and keeping their marriages together and raising families. So sometimes I think we're out there looking for love in all the wrong places. And it's a process of realizing who we are and what our strengths are and letting go of the past. I firmly believe that our past does not determine our destiny. And sometimes it's a process of being comfortable in who you were and who you were created to be and the gifts that you have, that you have to let go of some of the things that held you back or some of the woundedness that you carried. Learn to forgive. And because I really don't think you can heal and move on unless you do forgive. It doesn't mean you forget. A lot of those wounds can be scars, but it's to let it go because it's only going to hold you back and what you have to be. I think also growing up in the 70s, we had a lot of pressures on us that, that you can have it all, right? You can do it all. You can, but maybe not at the same time in your life. And I think with the freedom of turning 60, if you're in a place that you're happy, that you feel that you are who you are, and you've let go of some of this, and you really get to the point where you really don't care what anyone else thinks about you because you've come to terms with that a long time ago. And I think that's part of a really healthy process. As we get older, we just have a feeling that we just want to let go of things, and that could be physically and that could be emotionally, to just truly be who we are. We almost come back to being childlike and that wonder, and the world is there for us to be what we want to be and who we want to be. And I think you realize too, Denise, that as you get older, I'm turning 60, my life is pretty well more than half done, right? So you really want to find out what's really important to you and to focus on that. For me, I'm still working. I love what I do here at NSBI. Right now, my file is working with businesses diversity, primarily lots of women-owned businesses. And I really love that because I know I could never be an entrepreneur like you are, but I have a great passion of helping and wanting to work with that. And that started a really long time ago. I think it was my destiny or my calling. I was 2 years old when my parents took me up to Mount Saint Vincent University. And they said, you know what, someday she'll be coming here and graduating from here. And they took my picture standing in front of Everest's Hall. And sure enough, 16 years later, I did graduate from the Mount. But it all began with my parents, who really saw that there is nothing you can't do if you don't want to do it. And when you do it, you should do it really well. And then when I went to the Mount, we had a president there, Dr. Margaret Fulton, who basically said the same thing, like, you can do anything you want to do, you can be what you want to be. And that was really shaping for me, because when I graduated back in 1981 as part of the first graduating class from the Bachelor Public Relations degree program, I really felt that there was no job I couldn't do and nothing I couldn't be. So when I got into a situation where it might have been more, the glass ceiling was there, and, because you're a woman, you might have had to work a little harder. That I never questioned it. And I was almost quite shocked to see it, because back in the late 70s, Mount Saint Vincent University was predominantly a women's university. So we were running student union, running the entertainment committee, running the year. There was nothing we couldn't do. I was senior class president with one of my friends. So that was really important and empowering to me. And when I go back to the Mount, I work very closely with the Center for Women in Business in my capacity here. I'm very emotional. Even now, I'll probably get emotional now, is because I really realized the gift I was given, and I didn't realize it until many years later. So I think that's really encouraging for younger women to have mentors to say, there's nothing you can't do. You might have to clean up some of the stuff going on in your heart, but in what's happening emotionally to you, but there's nothing you can't do, it can't be. And it's seizing the day and being happy with your choices. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I love coming into work. I love the difference I'm making. And if that ever changes, I probably will retire. But I think our generation is redefining what being a grandparent is and being 60 years old. And that is the message that I'm trying to instill in my grandchildren. They're still little, between the ages of 2 and 6. And to be that source of unconditional love for them. As I had a paternal grandmother who every time she looked at me, it was like I was the most amazing thing she's ever seen. That unconditional love. And I think being 60 and realizing everything I've learned, I can be that to my grandchildren, that I can love them unconditionally and let them think that they are the most wonderful creation, because that's one thing that grandparents can do. So I've learned a lot over the years, and it's been a process for me to get here. It hasn't always been easy, but I do have a strong faith. It's been faith handed down to me for generations, and I believe in God. I believe in the power of prayer and Holy Spirit and Jesus, and that has been part of my journey in becoming the person I am today. When our sons moved out, it was like, they're gone. My life is over. And this happened about 10 years ago. And you start to think about, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But you're absolutely right, because we have to, you're trying to keep your career, you're trying to keep your relationships going, and, you have to feed the kids so they can get out that door. And you think, boy, oh boy, if I am blessed to have grandchildren, I will be the best grandmother ever. And that is it. When you're with your grandchildren, you're not babysitting them. You are spending time with them because you know what your children are going through, because you went through it yourself. So you're going to be that unconditional love force, and you are totally focused on your grandchildren. And I'm an active grandparent. We're very fortunate. We see our grandchildren every week. They live in Cole Harbor with us. So it's so freeing to be that and to encourage. I have one granddaughter, 3 grandsons, but it's really encouraging my granddaughter to be anything that she wants to be, and instilling them, to be respectful, and that they need to do the very best they can, whatever it is they choose to do. The most important thing is, like our children, is that they find out what their path is and what they enjoy. And very often the things that you're best at, that is what you're going to do really well at too, and it will bring you joy. When we had the empty nest syndrome, and that was hard, because like that dream we're all supposed to have, marry our prince, have that white picket fence, you've done all that, you've married your prince, and hopefully you're still talking. One thing that we always did, because as you know, it can get a little hairy trying to keep everything together, is my husband and I always did a date night, and we would get to neutral ground, even if it was the neighborhood pub. It was just something with being a neutral ground, to stay committed, to stay communicating, to stay knowing each other, and to help us better deal with the life changes we were going through in working with our kids. And that worked really, really well. So when the kids left, we weren't total strangers. We still had a future, because I think with marriage is that you really have to stay. You're continually changing. You go through stages of newlyweds. You're dealing with careers and so forth. The kids move out, and then you're facing retirement. So it's never really over, the changes and adapting and working it together, and starting to realize your family unit is going to change when the kids move out and you start to relate to them as adults. And I think also we even have a better relationship, because as they become parents, they can have a better appreciation what we went through and what we did. And the other thing I've learned too is that your actions say far more than words. Uh, far more, because I used to think, we had boys and were they listening to anything? And they were, because we can see it in how, in the choices they made and how they become really great dads and husbands. So we're very, very fortunate that some of it took, and we've encouraged them to have their date nights once a week, just to go out and talk to each other, and they do that. So we're really happy. Every marriage has its challenges. So it's not the amount of challenges you have to deal with. It's really comes down to how you handle them, right? If two people are committed to make the relationship work, you'll find a way to make it work. If you aren't, it won't. So the marriages that last and survived, it's not that they had less challenges. I look at my own parents. They were married 61 years. My mom passed last year, but they had their share of challenges and they worked through it. So it's that open communication in wanting to make the relationship work, I think, is the key to long-term relationships and marriages. First of all, I admire women-owned businesses because they're balancing so much, and they often have two things to do, because very often there's just one or two of them, before they start to increase, or very often they're the sole proprietor. And not only are they doing the business, they're doing the business development. So that can become really hard. Um, and it's trying to keep that work life and owning your own business. It's a tough balance to do, to put it all together. And there may be times when your children might be a little more demanding and your business may not be able to grow as it can. um, and that's a really hard thing. So first of all, number one, women can't beat themselves up, because we're really good at doing that. I should have done this, I should have done that. But we have to let that go and realize we have the confidence. The other, sometimes I find with women-owned businesses, is a confidence issue. It's believing in themselves that they can do this. So it's to get that confidence. And if myself and our colleagues here at NSBI and some of the other partners that are involved in working on businesses can help give them that confidence and say, yeah, you can do this. And sometimes it's having, because your business is an extension of who you are, and sometimes you need that outside person or opinion saying, yeah, this is really good, you can do this. And I have never seen a better time since I've been working with government to be a woman-owned business, because the federal government is taking it very seriously. There's trade missions for women-owned businesses. It is a great time to be a woman-owned business. There's tremendous resources, financial assistance, and not to be afraid to pick up that phone, call me, or call Jennifer Fraser, or you if they're in your neighborhood. But you can do this. And the other important piece of advice I give the women-owned businesses I work with is that you have to determine your own idea of success. And it's not going to be everyone's idea. Not everyone's going to have a huge manufacturing facility, but and that's okay if some do, or they become a multinational corporation. It's to define what is your idea of successful business and then work back to make that happen. No two people are going to have the same model, and that's okay. It has to be what you want it to be, and then go for that. So those are some of my words of wisdom that I give to our women-owned businesses. I think
I
we
really
have. The other thing would be personal or professional. Is that never give up, right? My husband and I, this is our story, and I'm not telling anything that hasn't been out there. We met at the Nova Scotia High School Drama Festival in 1975. And um, I was almost 16, he was 17. And he had really long hair and was playing underage in a band in the Timberley Tavern. And it really was love at first sight. I mean, it doesn't exist. I really too. There was this deep, deep connection, but we were very young. And, I'm from New Glasgow, and when he came up to meet my parents, it didn't go very well. Um, I was this really quiet little A student girl, and he was smoking cigarettes, hair down to hair, this big mustache, what the styles were in the 70s with guys. And my parents were so shocked they couldn't even talk about it till later. And this is not the vision that they had for their daughter. So they forced to break us up. And of course, I, continued to stay in touch with him. And, eventually, I went to Mount Saint Vincent University. We broke up, and we started dating there. He had been away in Calgary and came back, and we broke up again, and so on and so on. But we both had a lot of growing up to do, and we ended up finally getting married. It was all about second chances in our 30s. And, he had married someone else. The marriage lasted about 7 years. So, and actually my children are my stepchildren, because he came with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at the time, which, being a single woman and getting married and dealing with all of this. So, we've been married now, happily married for 26 years now. It's all worked out. And it was really funny. At the time we were getting married, back then there wasn't internet, and I got calls from friends all across the university, tell me you're not back with him again. You're going, he'll break your heart, but yet again. But, we had to stay true to ourselves, and it was a journey to get us there. So, I really think we know in our hearts what the best course in life for us, be it education, being relationships and so forth. And you really do have to be true to yourself and find who that is. And something really worthwhile is always worthwhile fighting for. So it's to realize there's going to be setbacks. Things aren't always perfect, but that's okay, because we aren't perfect either. So hang in there, even when the going is tough. And if it's truly meant to be, and you're truly going in the direction you're meant to be, it will work out. It will be, but you got to hang in. And that could be relationships, business, raising children. I know many times I thought, did I raise, are they learning anything, or did I raise criminals, right? But, you really have to, you wonder, teenage boys, what it can be like. So stay true to yourself, follow your heart. It will never let you down. They loved Keith. They still do. Well, my mom passed last year, and because they really loved him. And it's really funny when with my mom's Alzheimer's, we laughed about it. It wasn't funny at the time, but they laughed about it the days. But it was really unusual. My mom had Alzheimer's, so she could remember things in the past. Not She forgot the grandchildren's names, who they were. She never forgot Keith. Every time she saw him, she was always happy to see him, and probably had more conversation with him than I had with my mom. So, it came around. I turned out fine. Their marriage lasted. They came to love him. So it was a great story that we told. And, that's the other thing too, is that at just one other point, when our first son got married, my husband was the MC. And, he, in front of all 200 people or so, he publicly said to our son, I wasn't perfect. I'd made mistakes. And to publicly admit that to our children, it was a very emotional moment, but it was very freeing, because, as parents, and my parents and my grandparents, we all did make mistakes. But to admit that to our children, and to admit it publicly, it was a really freeing moment for all of us. So I really think, no matter, how great a parent you thought, and I'm not saying we were terrible parents, but we weren't perfect. It was just a real freeing moment. So once again, it's being true and authentic. I think that's the word too, is being authentic, and to let your kids know, what, I'm really sorry. We could have done a better job, but we will be the best darn grandparents that are out there. So anyway, so that's another thing. That was another thing we did at our son's wedding 10 years ago. So we highly recommend doing that for us, because, hey, we weren't perfect. We made mistakes. Because if you live in denial, oh yeah, everything was great and perfect, that's not good for anybody, right? And it's part of this freedom of being 60 and letting go of some of the things that, you could have done better. So I think if you don't, these things just fester in you, and it can result in bitterness. And even when you hold on to bitterness, it's been proven that it can lead to diseases and so forth. So you got to get rid of all that stuff inside you. And if you want to feel free and really good about yourself as you start to age. I have a good friend, Deacon Larry Oni. He's from New Orleans, and he says, and I go by, is that your past does not determine your destiny. So it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done. you're not where you were there. You live in the moment. You don't worry about the future. You're just to be who you are, an authentic person in that moment. And that's okay, right? So that's what we have to embrace.